So here is the Micro 2012 question number 1 for Steve Rail. You can pause this, read through it, try to answer it, and then hit play to watch my solution. Okay, so the information we were given was that Steve Rail was the only provider of train service operating between two cities, and it is currently incurring economic losses. Because it's the only provider of train service, we're talking about a monopoly. So a monopolist has a demand curve like this, and then its marginal revenue curve is going to be halfway between demand and the y-axis and about twice as steep. And then we need to show that well, I'll go ahead. I'd like to put my marginal cost curve on first because then that tells me that Steve Rail is going to produce where marginal revenue and marginal cost are equal, and that would be at this quantity. They actually want me to label that QM. Now, because they are incurring losses, I need my average total cost curve to be above the price at QM. So the price at QM is off of Steve Rail's demand curve at QM, so I'm going to label that PM. So if average total cost is higher than that, and remember, marginal cost should always intersect average total cost at its minimum value. There's my average total cost curve, and I have completed the first part of Part A by showing the profit maximizing or loss minimizing solution at QM and PM. The next thing we want to do is show the area of economic losses shaded completely. So I'm going to change colors here. If we go to QM, this is the price that they're being paid up to the average total cost curve. That's what it costs them to make it. So the area of this rectangle right here at QM between the average total cost and the price off of the demand curve, I could put price there, remember. DARP, Mr. is divorced from DARP. But now we've shaded our area of economic loss. The last part of A was to find and label the allocatively efficient quantity as QE. So the allocatively efficient is when price is equal to marginal cost, and that happens right here. And so we'll label that as QE. Part B asks if Steve Rail raised the price above PM, would the total revenue increase, decrease, or not change, and explain. Well, if you remember, monopolies always operate in the elastic range of their demand curve. We know that it's elastic at QM because the marginal revenue is greater than 0. And if you picture the rubber band in the elastic range, if the price rises, total revenue is going to decrease. The rubber band, one hand goes up, the other goes down because the rubber band is elastic. In Part C, we're supposed to assume a per unit subsidy. And we want to know if Steve Rail's quantity, its profit maximizing quantity, would increase, decrease, or not change, and explain. So the marginal cost curve of the monopolist is the same as it's affected by the same things as the supply factors, and subsidies and taxes is the S in corset. So we have a positive, and because it's not lump sum, if it was lump sum it wouldn't affect the marginal values, but because it is a per unit subsidy, the marginal cost curve is going to shift to the right. And as you can see, if it shifted to the right, this new quantity would indeed be larger. The new place where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue has gone from QM to QN, so there has been an increase as a result of that per unit subsidy. The next part wants to know what has happened to consumer surplus from this change. So to see what's happened to consumer surplus, first of all, let's look to see what consumer surplus used to be. At QM, the consumer surplus is the area below the demand curve but above the price that they pay. So it would have been this area outlined in green. Now, if we have moved to QN, go up to the demand curve to find that new price, and so now the area beneath the demand curve and down to the price has increased by this amount. So as you can see, consumer surplus has increased. Okay, the last thing is Part D. We assume that the subsidy becomes a lump sum, so it is not dependent on the quantity that Steve Rail produces. So for that reason, it adds to their economic profit, or helps to reduce their economic loss, but it does not change their profit maximizing quantity, where MC and MR equal each other at quantity QM. To show the original area then of deadweight loss, the quantity that society wants is where the price is equal to marginal cost. So this area, this triangular area that I've just outlined and shaded roughly, would be the original area of deadweight loss. And since they don't change the quantity they produce, the area of deadweight loss is unaffected from the lump sum subsidy. And then to answer the final question, whether their economic losses would increase, decrease, or not changed, obviously if they're getting a lump sum subsidy, economic losses will be less or decrease from what they would be in the absence of having a subsidy at all. And that's all, folks.